Hello and welcome to Culture Illiterate, a podcast where four friends overthink comic book movies. I'm one of your hosts, Jake, and sometimes I feel like after last week we had such a great 2-hour long conversation about Spider-Man 2, a movie we all really enjoy, and I feel like, wow, I feel like they need to be thankful for me for pitching this podcast idea. And then there's weeks like this week where we watched Catwoman, and I feel like I need to profusely apologize to my co-hosts for pitching this podcast idea.
It won't be enough, because I'll never forgive you.
And that's completely valid. This movie sucks.
It's bad.
It's awful.
Are we doing our fun facts and whatnot? I guess.
No.
Oh, my fun fact is what I just said.
Okay.
That was a fun fact.
That's not very fun, Jake, but
It's going to be hard to make this one fun, Jason, in any regard.
Well, my name's Jason, and I don't have a fun fact.
Fantastic. Beautiful. 10 out of 10. I love it.
Do you have a fun fact, Sean?
Matt, I thought we were going in regular order, and Matt, you were next, so I guess...
Okay, then. Well, I can say that, is this even spoilers? Not really. So, Howard the Duck makes another cameo in Guardians 3, and he's voiced by Seth Green. That's my fun fact.
That's your fun fact? And your name is Matt.
I don't like you.
You never covered that part.
Yeah, I don't know who you are anymore. My name is Sean. My fun fact is that I think lemons are the best fruit, and I would eat a whole lemon if it were, good for my teeth.
First of all, that's disgusting. And second
If
of all,
we were to reach 100 subscribers, we'd just film a video of Sean just sucking on lemons.
I would gladly do that.
I just wanted to say...
If Shaw wants to, when we hit 100, I don't know if we're talking 100 cumulative or on one specific platform, but if we hit 100 and Shaw wants to, I'll put that video on the socials.
If we hit...
we can do that for the YouTube. How about for the YouTube? Because that's usually where the milestones go to.
That's where the...
So right now, cumulatively, as of recording, we have 47 followers across platforms, but actually that's not counting Apple Podcasts. I can't see those numbers. But on Spotify we have 10, on YouTube we have 37.
If we get to cumulative 100, I will suck on an entire lemon and eat it out for everyone to see.
Well,
You heard it here first.
I decided that my fun fact is that I had to watch this movie in 5 separate sittings.
Oh, fantastic. I love it.
And it wasn't because I didn't have the time to do it the first time.
Here's the thing, and it's that you're not the only one. Well, for me, in this instance, we couldn't figure out a time for us to meet last week. And so that meant an extra week for me to watch this movie. And I didn't watch it because I really didn't want to put myself through it. I literally waited till the last minute. And I don't regret a thing because I enjoyed my week very much.
I'm sorry, Matt. I'm sorry, Jason. I'm sorry,
I enjoyed
Sean.
it so much that I'm glad I just get it out of the way for one day. I enjoyed the rest. Although I wish I watched Guardians 3 after Catwoman so I can have a pick-me-up. But as with life, everything fucking sucks.
Damn. And for context, if anyone's curious, is this a long movie that's hard to make time? It's an hour 44 including credits, so sub an hour 40 not watching the credits, which there's no post-credit scene or anything, not that you couldn't fast forward anyway. So it's not even it's just that bad. It's just that bad.
Yeah, do we have any recs, anyone?
Do we have any?
I mean,
I do have one rec, actually.
I also have a rec.
I do
you
too.
Go first, Jake.
You go first, Matt, or Sean.
Oh, I get to go first?
All right,
Either one of you.
Let's have a mix up right here. Let Sean go first.
Ooh, I get to go first for once. So since Guardians 3 came out a little while ago, I was going to recommend two good comics, of which I'm going to look up the creators' names now before I decide to accidentally either make a mistake and forget somebody or, I at least know the one. So I recommend reading Guardians of the Galaxy, the 2008 run, written by Dan Abnett and Annie Lanning. Highly recommend it. I love it to death. And then as for my other recommendation, I heavily recommend Groot, the comic, written by Jeff Loveness, and I do not remember who did the art, but as for Guardian things, those are two things I highly recommend, and I love them so much. They're some of my favorite comics, so I heavily recommend them.
Are you reading the new Dan Abnett Groot mini?
I didn't even know that was a thing.
Oh yeah, Dan, the first you should email the shop. The first issue's out. I know as of Saturday there were still copies left of it.
Oh boy.
But you should look into that because it's Abnett. So
I'm gonna have to send my oh Jesus Christ.
And the new, if you didn't, do you have the new Guardians run on your poll?
Yeah, I have that on my poll at least.
Okay. Just making sure. Matt, you want to go with your rec?
All right. Well, I watched Guardians 3 at the weekend, and well, the general consensus is that this movie is great and you should watch it. And I am going to recommend it, but that's a little obvious. So I am going to recommend another one of James Gunn's superhero projects. It is HBO Max television series called Peacemaker. I thought a lot of people watched the show, but apparently not. It's like quite like a sizable amount of people who haven't seen it, and you should, because it's fantastic. It's definitely not like if you haven't seen other James Gunn's work other than Guardians, it's definitely different. It still has that signature like James Gunn like script and quirkiness. So I'm sure you guys would like to watch it anyway. And I can't share any details, at least in my head, without spoiling anything. So all I'm going to say is that it's a really good show. It's a really good watch. Has really good performances, and it's on HBO Max. Watch it before Discovery decimates it.
Yeah. Fuck David Zaslav. I think we've said that a few times on here. I'm going to rec. Matt, I know you weren't crazy about this one, but, don't yuck my yum right now. I'm going to recommend the movie Sisu. I absolutely adore it. It just got released in... it's kind of had a slow rollout. It just got released, at least where I'm around, and in the U.S., I believe, just a couple weeks ago. It's, by the time this comes out, it's probably not going to be playing anywhere really, but it technically is classified as a 2022 movie, so I got it as like my 5th favorite movie of 2022. And my pitch for it's pretty simple. Do you hate Nazis? If your answer is no, then fuck off, stop listening to this. If your answer is yes, I assume you'd want to see them get blown up and just generally eviscerated, brutally murdered. That's the movie. It's like a revenge movie, but 1944. And shit, is it Finland? I'm blanking on it now. Let me Google it real quick, because I don't know why I'm drawing a blank on this movie that I loved so much. Yeah, Finnish. Okay, yeah. So it's like John Wick, but 1944 Finnish gold miner who just kills Nazis in increasingly brutal ways for 90 minutes, and it kind of makes... It's one of the most brutal movies I've ever seen. Compared it to John Wick, but it kind of makes John Wick look like G-rated, in my opinion. It's pretty violent, but it's really good and entertaining, and what's not to love about everything I've said. So that's my rec.
I think the movie was okay. I definitely don't think it was amazing, like Jake said. In fact, I let Jake's hype get to me, and so I did have relatively high expectations going into it, and I was kind of let down. It wasn't awful. I mean, who doesn't like Nazis getting shot and brutalized? I enjoyed it, but it's definitely isn't at this like the same tier of like creativity or choreography as the John Wick movies. Well, obviously, because it's not that high of a budget.
It's less choreo based and more just sheer violence and gore.
Mm-hmm. In fact, my favorite,
it's brutal. It's carnage.
But here's the thing: is that like it's definitely not, because the thing is, when watching the movie, for me at least, my favorite scenes weren't the action scenes. It was just the scenes in which like it was when Sisu, that's not his name, but I know that's what they call him, is basically he like comes back from the dead, and you just see like the fear he permeates to like the German soldiers. Like they can't believe that he looks like a feeble old man, and yet he's so dangerous, and yet they can't kill him. I love their reactions to it. I love like the build up to it as well. Those were my favorite parts of the movie. But the actual action scenes, they were okay. They weren't impressive, and you can't even just say like, oh, because it's low budget. But there were there's a lot of low budget movies that have great choreography and great action scenes. And so I feel like it could have been better, but what I got definitely wasn't bad. I'm not going to recommend it, but I definitely say, like, if what Jake said piques your interest, give it a try, because it might not be my cup of tea, but it might be yours.
That's trying to push off talking about this movie as long as possible.
Shut the fuck up, Sean.
Well, I want to keep it short because this episode is not about Sisu, unfortunately. But
we can talk
Matt's
about
full of
Sisu.
shit.
Just listen to me and Jake debate about Sisu for an hour, and we can cut.
The
we
best
can
personal
call it off for
endorsement
today.
I can give it from my experience is that with every kill, when I saw it in theaters, and I got to see it in Dolby, which was wonderful, but every kill, people were wooing and clapping. So that was really awesome. But yeah,
I wish I got that.
That was great that you experienced.
The most I got was a ooh for the first kill, and then favorite kill. My favorite action scene was the first one. Was like the first action scene in which he stabs the guy through the head and then makes the guy shoot himself with his own rifle through his head, like through the chin and up his head, and there's guts and blood everywhere. Ooh, so good. That was really good. I really like that scene. All right, okay, I'll stop stalling.
All right, well, I don't know if Jason's got anything.
I don't really have a rec. No, I went to a 100 Gex show recently. That was pretty cool.
I think you've wrecked them before.
I have wrecked them before, but if you get the chance to go see them too, their show was phenomenal. It was just a lot of fun. Everyone there was having a lot of fun. Everyone was happy to be there, looked excited and all that, and plus their performance was phenomenal. So I love those two individuals that make up 100 Gex, and I voice my support anytime I can. You should go check them out and go see a show if you can.
Yeah, they make good beep boop music.
Yes, they do.
Well, without further ado, and this is funny because Matt, who obviously, if you listen to last episode, Matt hosted. I want to take some time on air. Matt fucking killed the last episode. I went and edited it back and I was like, this is flowing so well. I'm stalling more, but I also did want to give Matt a shout out. But off mic, Matt was like, oh, maybe I'll even host the next one. And I was like, oh, you're not going to want to once you see it. So yeah, without further ado, we're covering Catwoman, released July 23rd, 2004, written by Teresa Rebick, John Brancanto, Michael Ferris, and John Rogers, directed by Pitoff, no first name or no last name, I don't know which it is, just Pitoff, Pitof, and shot by Terry Arbogast. It stars Halle Berry as Patience Phillips / Catwoman, Benjamin Bratt as Detective Tom Lone, Sharon Stone as Laura Hedare, Lambert Wilson as George Hedare, Frances Conroy as Ophelia Powers, and Alex Borstein as Sally, who, one more rec. Alex Borstein, fantastic in the show The Marvelous Mrs. Maisel. Check that out instead of this.
All these people that you just named should be ashamed of themselves for being involved with this movie.
Yes.
All of them.
Yeah, they all could do better.
Yeah, all of them.
They're all better than this.
Every single one of them. Every single one of these people have contributed worse to society than Alex fucking Kurtzman. And if you guys who don't know who Alex Kurtzman is, he wrote the Transformers movies.
That's fair.
I still find it funny when looking for this movie online, or when watching this movie online. I was looking back at Halle Berry and how she acted afterwards, and she accepted her Razzie for the movie in person and called it a piece of shit movie.
And so, she wasn't wrong either.
She wasn't
That's
wrong.
That's a fun fact. I think the Razzies are dumb, but that is a very fun fact.
Oh, yes.
That's incredible. So had any of y'all seen this movie before? And assuming it's a no, what were you aware of about this movie going in, if anything?
I had heard of this movie. I had never seen it. I had never felt any compulsion to see it because I had heard it was terrible. I had seen one scene from it which Jake showed me, which was the basketball scene, which is the worst scene in any movie I've ever seen in my life. God, it was bad. Fuck. Anyway, so that being said, no, I haven't seen this, Jake, and I never wanted to, and now I have.
I guess I'm next. I was aware of its existence. I heard it was really bad, so I decided not to see it. And that's all I need to say.
I guess for me, too, it's kind of the same thing. I knew of its existence. I had seen some scenes online. I never wanted to watch it, and I was hoping to live with that forever, and now I can't.
Did y'all just, forget it existed when I pitched this idea?
No.
Kind of.
I was
just wondering.
Okay, well, let me put it this way. We've watched some dog shit in this thing, right? Nothing's been any worse than I expected it to be yet. This one was just this was a different level.
We've seen movies that were bad, but still had some redeeming qualities or had something in it for us to talk about. There was still some kind of
entertainment I got from most of the shitters previously. This one just, I'm done. It's empty.
Yeah.
The tank is
totally empty. It's completely soulless.
Let me paint the picture here for what this movie's about for the audience that I hope for their sake has not watched it themselves. The movie follows Patience Phillips, who is an original character who has appeared in this movie and nothing else before since. Thank God. And she's an artist and a meek people pleaser. Her main support is her best friend and coworker Sally. They work for a cosmetics company called Hedera Beauty, which is ready to ship this new skin cream Boline, something like that is able to reverse the effects of aging. Patience meets and begins to date Detective Tom Lane after he rescues her from what he believes is a suicide attempt, but she's actually just trying to save a cat from falling and draw it back into her building. However, when Patience visits the R&D laboratory facility to deliver a redone ad design, she overhears a discussion between scientist Dr. Ivan Slavicki and Laurel Hedera, the wife of the company owner George Hedera, about the dangerous side effects of continually using the product. Laurel's guards discover Patience in order to dispose of her. Patience tries to escape using a conduit pipe, but the minions have it sealed and flush her out, drowning her basically in sewage. She washes up on shore, but by shore, it's just this random empty rock with dozens of cats inexplicably on it. And they lick her back to life, particularly an Egyptian Mao cat named Midnight, the one that had appeared at her apartment earlier when her now love interest thought she was killing herself. From that moment on, she develops cat-like attributes. And you may be thinking cat-like attributes includes reflexes, claws, maybe some kind of scent powers like that. But it also means she chooses to eat catnip and drink cream. And just behave like a cat. But not even, and then maybe you're thinking, is it kind of, this is sort of sounds like a similar-ish origin to the much better version in Batman Returns with Michelle Pfeiffer's Selena Kyle Catwoman, and she's sort of cat-ish, but this is so much more extreme and done in a much more disgusting way. It's less kink and more stink.
Let me just explain this. Imagine, right, Halle Berry acting like a cat, but in the horniest way possible, so that the weebs in the audience will get horny. That's exactly what happened.
I know I'm not the one who should be making the judgment, ooh, Jake's ace, but there's nothing sexy about
Jake,
this at all.
Let me cut to the chase here. It's an attempt at sex appeal, and listen, we have made the stance in this podcast that movies should be horny. I stand by that stance. But if it's gonna be horny, make it based on charisma between two characters and chemistry, or a character trait of someone. They try to make something sexy here and just do it purely based off of people think Halle Berry's hot, let's put her in, revealing clothes. There's nothing there. There's no substance to the horniness, is what I'm getting at.
There's no substance to the horniness. I need more. It fails to fulfill fetish roles.
I watch it for the plot, all right?
So speaking of actually Halle Berry and Halle Berry's looks, it is kind of funny that this movie's idea of making Halle Berry seem unappealing, like she's some kind of hermit, is just let's dress her down in casual clothes. She wears all the clothing and hair in this movie is very 2000s, in particular for the women. It's a little less dated for the men, who kind of just wear like jeans and jackets and leather jackets. But their idea is like, let's just like put her in like loose sleeves, and then when she turns into Catwoman, she cuts her hair. And that's it. And I'm like, she still just looks like Halle Berry.
And she had glasses.
They're trying to portray her like she's like hideous and gross. But also, like, if you know what Halle Berry looks like and you find Halle Berry attractive, she just looks the same. They don't really do anything different.
But then, honestly, she got her haircut as Catwoman, and it was such a terrible haircut that I was like, honestly, she looked better before, dude. Like,
that's the 2000s coming in.
I have the question of like, is this the first time we're seeing this trope in a comic book movie? Has this been
women need a makeover trope?
Not just that included. That's honestly included here because this movie is just incredibly oddly sexist. But
yes.
like the having somebody who's really conventionally attractive dressed down to play what is either a hero or a villain in the beginning, and then as soon as they get their powers, they suddenly start to like become more confident and then dress more again conventionally attractive.
Yeah, and that's in like Wonder Woman too and shit.
Because that's in Wonder Woman. That's in what was it? That's in The Amazing Spider-Man 2. That's in...
Yeah, no.
I think you can make a case. You could make a case that's, in terms of things we've covered so far, Supergirl kind of does it, because she's definitely more confident post getting the Supergirl costume and arriving on Earth. I mean, but look, I mean, we're still dealing with immense amount of, this is only the second movie with a female lead that we've covered. Batman Returns, obviously Catwoman has the most screen time, and that they do a lot of great things with Catwoman, but like technically speaking, that is officially a Batman movie, and we are still, I think, in a very similar realm of Supergirl and Catwoman, though Supergirl was, I think, a little bit less terrible in this regard of just not treating women like people.
Oh, this movie felt like misogynistic to watch.
Oh yes, 100%. It made me uncomfortable.
I felt bad almost watching it. Like there were moments that I was like, there's just like no care put into any female character in this, and I just feel upset. Like I feel bad on behalf of the male gender.
Well, that's one of my biggest questions I have about this movie's, like, the conception of this movie is, who was it for? Because obviously your aim is so male gazy to the point of like Catwoman's outfit is basically just a ripped up BDSM costume, to the point of like the tears in the tight leather pants, you can like see the bottom of her ass, and it's just like she always looks like she's covered in oil, and she's basically just wearing a bra, and there's tears in that too. It's horrible, and it's shot in just a very pervy manner, but also at the same time, like, the plot, and this is one of the things I want to get into, is centered around an anti-aging cream and the makeup industry. And I'm like, who is this for? Because that doesn't feel like, again, especially in like the 2004 mindset, it is like visually shot like it's for straight men that are so fucking straight and cool. And then the plot's about makeup, which is so not that 2004 masculine idea. And it's like sort of, I guess, attempting to say something about the fact that men control the makeup industry that is aimed at like manipulating women. But again, I'm just like almost guessing that it wanted to say something, because it really doesn't. But that doubles down on the fact that it's like a weird plot choice for like what amounts to like a really bad fetish movie.
I feel like to some degree it tried to touch on both sides and be like, but we need the horny men, but we also need like women to like this movie too, and it's just, it can't do both.
They were trying to play both sides, and
they failed.
And they failed on both fronts, which is just honestly embarrassing.
This is a worse cat-based movie than Cats.
I didn't even feel like it was that way. I didn't even feel that, because I just thought they were just trying to make her look stronger just so she could be more of a dominatrix. That's how I saw it. So that the guys who want to be stepped on can imagine Halle Berry stepping on them. That's how I saw it.
And like, speaking of other questionable decisions, how about the fact that they decided to center the movie around a completely new character and not Selena Kyle? That's just weird.
Yeah.
It's just it was such an odd creative choice. Like, I don't entirely mind it all too much, because it's not like I mean, I wish they had chosen Selena Kyle to be the main focus of it. I just find it such a strange creative choice, and I don't see why. Even then,
sorry, continue.
I was gonna say, even if it's like you didn't want Halle Berry to use that name for some reason, my question still becomes why.
So I actually can kind of answer why, and that's because I don't know if any of you caught it, but there actually is a Michelle Pfeiffer Catwoman cameo of sorts in this movie. Let me speed through the next paragraph actually, and then get into this because it comes up in the next paragraph. So, from Midnight's owner, the eccentric researcher Ophelia Powers, Patience learns that the Egyptian Mao cat serves as a messenger of the goddess Bast. Patience realizes that she is now a Catwoman, reborn with abilities that are both a blessing and a curse. Disguised as a mysterious vigilante named Catwoman to hide her identity, Patience, under the cover of darkness, robs a jewelry store and then decides she's going to start searching for answers as to who killed her and why. I'm not entirely sure how this is not exceedingly obvious to her, since she walked in on a secret meeting, got chased down by guards that work for those people. I don't know what she's missing out here, but anyway, eventually her research, which includes finding Slavicki's body and then being accused of the murder, leads to Laurel. She asks Laurel to keep an eye on George, to which Laurel agrees. However, Patience confronts George, who's attending an opera with another woman, as Catwoman, and he reveals he knows nothing about the side effects. The police, led by Patience's love interest, Detective Tom Lone, arrive. Catwoman escapes after a fight with Tom, who's unaware of Catwoman's real identity. Later on, Laurel murders George for his infidelity and admits to having Dr. Slavicki killed because he wanted to cancel the product's release. She contacts Catwoman and frames her for the murder. Tom then takes Catwoman into custody. Laurel plans to release Bowline. I'm gonna go with Bowline. I don't remember.
I think it's Boline.
Yeah,
Boline. It's spelled line according to the summary, but I blocked it out really. Boline. Laura plans to release Boline to the public the following day. So when the mysterious crazy cat lady Ophelia Powers, when Patience goes and meets her and she explains this, like, that the Catwoman is this mantle that passes down through magical cat licks, there's actually spreads out a bunch of pictures on the floor of past Catwoman, one of which is Michelle Pfeiffer's Catwoman. So this movie is technically supposed to take place in the same continuity of the Burton films, and then at the time as well as the Schumacher films. And that's because this spawned from the original idea of Burton wanting to do a Catwoman movie with Michelle Pfeiffer, and then obviously Burton leaving the Batman franchise, it going in a drastically different direction, but the idea of a Catwoman movie just kind of kept, circulating in like pre-production hell and like concept hell until eventually this happened. So then it got to the point, because of the fact that it spun off from that, they decided to keep it in that way and to have it so that it is like, I guess loosely based in that universe, and therefore they just went with an original Catwoman. But then it also leads to the decision of, it's not like it's still set in Gotham, or at least not clearly. They never actually say the name of the city it's set in the movie. The police department doesn't have a city name on it. It's just like police department. And so there's no official setting. There's no reference to Batman or anything. And it's a baffling decision to make a Catwoman solo movie without any real reference to Batman, while also still setting it in technically a Batman universe. It's this one of like a series of just ill-conceived decisions.
Yeah, it also feels uncomfortable when, like, I don't know, like, where this is, like, usually if it's Gotham, and presumably I could only assume that's what they wanted to go for in this, and they really didn't. But like, there's no attachment to anything here, and it's kind of, it makes it kind of This also makes the movie kind of uncomfortable, because it's like they wanted it just feels weird, because it's like they wanted to make their own thing, but wanted to take the name of Catwoman into it. It just, a lot of this just doesn't line up with what Catwoman is, and it's really uncomfortable to see all of this come together. And then, like, on top of that, it's just Oh god, it's this movie's bad. I hate this so much. We just sped through so much of the plot. I'm so shocked that we've gone through this so fast. Like,
I love
we haven't
that we
even
sped
talked
through
about,
it so much.
I think we just skipped through like the two scenes that I know Jake referenced, which was the basketball scene and the fucking her drinking cream in a bar.
I got this summary condensed down to 3 paragraphs so that a lot of it could just be us kind of interspersed. I wanted some plot for people to have context, but like so that we could spend most of the time just kind of ranting, I guess.
It's just
having a good
so
fun.
bad.
Context doesn't help though.
I'm gonna.
It's stupid and it's awful and it doesn't make sense and then it's horny and it's weird.
I want to mention the one note that I wrote down when I was watching this movie, and it had to do with every time that Halle Berry is outside at night, which is most of the time, and they show her, there's always a full moon. And this movie presumably takes over multiple days, as they show it during multiple different nights and throughout multiple different days. And every single nighttime, there's a full moon. It does not matter when, it is always a full moon, and I don't understand that.
Sean, you didn't even get to the worst part. Is that there's always a full moon, but it's never dark. It's always light. So you can see the oil slickness of Halle Berry's skin when she wears that Catwoman suit.
You mean fake Halle Berry?
Yeah, oh, you mean rubber Halle Berry? Yeah,
I was about to say that shit.
But that's the thing, is that it's...
She was out there looking like Stretch Armstrong.
Oh, she's definitely Stretch Armstrong. This movie has such horrible lighting. Like, this has the classic piss-colored orange teal for sunlight, and then like turquoise colored night times. Like, there's no like actual like contrast of colors. It's just everything's just one color. It's so it's ugly.
It's disgusting. Every single like sweeping shot that they're trying to show, like that they're trying to start a scene where it's just like a setup of like where they are, what building they're in. It's this disgusting CGI like camera swipe, like turn around an entire building, like an entire CGI building that just looks disgusting and is like the worst color you've ever seen. But the one thing I do want to add that I didn't get to mention is, and now that I like that you brought it up, Matt, speaking of lighting, the one thing that confused me in the beginning was, you know, the part before Halle Berry or Catwoman, before Catwoman becomes Catwoman and she gets shot out of the pipe and dies. The moment when she's getting chased by the guards in the medical facility that's testing the makeup, she goes behind like a pillar and her shadow is projected onto the boxes behind her. But then they show like the light isn't coming from in front of her, it's coming from behind her. So how is the light projecting her shadow onto the boxes behind her when the light is behind her and there's no light in front of her? It was such a goddamn awful shot.
Oh, okay, Sean, I know exactly what you're talking about, and that's the scene in which I wasn't paying attention because I was scrolling through my phone, because you were mentioning the scene and I remember everything beforehand, but then when she was about to get chased, I lost interest and I was just typing random shit on my phone. I wasn't even doing anything productive. I was just typing random shit on my phone because it was more entertaining to just type in random baubles of letters onto a random Samsung Note than to watch this goddamn movie for another minute. And I had like an hour to go. Okay, never mind. I'm not going to go into that right now. But yes, I know. Okay, yes and no. I know what you're talking about, Sean, but I wasn't paying attention to that scene because I hate this movie and it doesn't deserve my attention.
Fair enough. I mean, while we're talking about that in general, there's just so many poor choices that go into the death and resurrection scene for Patience / Catwoman. Again, I'm not really entirely sure how she doesn't realize who killed her and who is responsible. And there's so many excessive cuts in the chase scene that leads to the death and resurrection, and that's a theme throughout the movie. Every action scene is like edited to shit to the point of like I was getting a headache. I think this movie could give someone epilepsy if they didn't have it already. And like you would develop it from this movie. There's so many. It's like every single frame is a different cut. It's
I know. Okay, I have two examples of that. One was the club scene in which it was basically the lead up to the first action scene. She takes center stage after drinking a cup of cream, and then she takes out her whip and starts crackling it. And for some reason, they decided it was a great idea to start like flashing the screens with bright white lights. And I felt like I was about to drop down to the floor and have a seizure. And then as soon as that happens, we get to our first action scene, and I put action scenes in heavy quotations because if you ever seen a Taken movie, you'll know that those movies have so many cuts because Liam Neeson is an old man and cannot fight. Well, imagine that, but 10 times worse, because there is a camera cut every second. Like one punch can have like 3 cuts. It's absurd. An absurd amount of cuts, and I was actually getting nauseous while watching it. It's enough that it's like, here's the thing, it's enough for this movie to make me like mentally ill, but then it's also making me physically ill as well. It's actually killing me. It's actually killing me to watch this movie.
There were certain times where like Catwoman would get a big kickoff, and like instead of like keeping the angle close so you could really see it would like cut out to a wide angle. You know what I mean? Like, do you guys know what I'm talking about? I feel like that.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Like, I felt like that kept happening where like it would finally look like it was about to be a good shot, and then it would cut away to a different angle that looked way worse, and then it would cut back, and I'm like, what? No, stay at that. That was a better angle. I would have seen them hit better. Then it would have like actually been an impactful action scene, but instead I'm just looking at a bunch of horse shit on my screen.
Yeah, it's, oh my gosh. See, at least in Taken, it's still somewhat entertaining because even though there are an excessive amount of cuts, Liam Neeson is a good actor, and so he could sell it well. You don't get that luxury here. You don't. It's awful. It's awful. It's, oh my gosh. Like,
I mean, and it all is awful because, like I said, like I think the action's incoherent, but then even when it slows down and tries to do like dramatic beats, I guess, like Patience's death, it's just like overly dramatic music as Halle Berry in the most 2000s outfit, covered in water and dirt, gets licked back to life by stray cats, and they're playing this like orchestral music.
No, she doesn't get licked back to life. She gets breathed on to life. Like she like breathes something in her mouth, and I'm pretty sure it was like some blessing from the cat god.
Yeah, the cat breathes into her mouth. It opens its mouth and just goes ha.
It was sickening. I wanted to fucking.
Have you guys ever smelled cat breath?
Me, like, if you're ever like on the edge and watch this movie, you might just go over and never come back.
Yeah, you might as well consider the rope, because if this is where humanity goes, there is no hope. And so you might as well end it now, right?
Jesus,
because can you imagine what rock bottom will look like?
Jesus.
I don't want to be around to see that. Get me a rope.
Jesus. This is the second episode in like just a few Hulk and Catwoman that Matt has been talking about getting ropes.
I don't even remember the Hulk episode. And you know what?
You're better off.
You know what I do remember from the Hulk episode? The fact that I hated that movie. And let me tell you something about this movie. I would watch that Hulk movie 100 times before watching the first 10 minutes of this movie. I swear. And not because I feel any better about that Hulk movie, because this one's that fucking bad.
Yeah.
It's just horrendous.
And how about the decision to... how about all that crazy lore that they wrote in about cats? And
it was dumb.
Oh, it was such a terrible...
You just reminded me.
Well written. It was bad.
Matt, were you...
I'm all for lore.
Did you guys remember, like, in the introduction where they have, like, all those pieces of art and articles about full former Catwoman?
Yeah.
Yes.
Do you remember that? Do you remember those like poorly photoshopped pictures of that cat, that god cat, throughout all those pictures?
Yeah.
It was like photoshopped into like the Victorian time pictures. It was god awful and so obviously a Photoshop. And then there was this like picture of a Catwoman, like an actual like Catwoman. She had like parts of a cat on her face, and it was like a grotesque Photoshop. It was disgusting.
Matt, were you insulted on behalf of your cats? Because like honestly, I was, and I don't even know your cats like that.
Oh, you guys just reminded me. Give me a second. But my cat actually came over and lied down next to me while I was watching this movie, and so she was my moral support. And I honestly hope she could talk, because she usually watches things on my phone screen or tablet screen. And she left midway through. I think because of how offended she was and how this is how she is represented in mainstream media. I honestly hope that maybe cats will gain sentience relatively soon, and so I can just make a YouTube video and have her have like an hour rant about Catwoman and how shitty it is and how it poorly misrepresents her species as a whole.
God damn. I mean, here's the thing too. Like, I know we usually like, you know, we try to we go through a plot to try to provide some context, and then we talk about not really the plot as much as the story, because those are two different things, right? And then we hit on like, we try to spend a lot of time as best we can on like big character beat moments. And for this episode, we're really just kind of like all over the place complaining, but it's because this movie is just so fucking empty. There's nothing there. It's a very, plot-wise, it's very simple, which in and of itself is fine. That's probably like the lone decency that this movie has, to not overcomplicate itself. But story-wise, there's no real arcs. Like, I mean, Patience is meek, and then she gets breathed on by cats, and now she's not meek. But that's not really an arc. Nothing really happens. And the romance is empty. There's no chemistry. This is easily the worst romance I think we've seen while covering any of these movies yet, including Supergirl's romance, which was literally just a witch cast a spell on a random boy and he followed Supergirl around, and for some reason she liked him. Yeah. And that was still better than this, because at least like Helen Slater has like some charisma. Not that Halle Berry, I mean, again, Halle Berry and Benjamin Bratt are both like talented individuals, but they're so clearly going through the motions in this thing. And this is one of the most low effort appearing movies I've ever seen.
I don't know if this is the best way to describe it, but I don't know about you guys and what you've dealt with in like the past on like cable, but like it reminds me of one of those really shitty sci-fi like original movies that they'd have on the Sci-Fi Channel back in the day. That's like really bad CGI because it's a TV budget and like all this other stuff. It makes me uncomfortable to know that this movie came out a year before Batman Begins.
And when Jake talked about emptiness, I'm just going to give you an example of how empty this movie is. So, to you avid listeners to this podcast, first off, thank you. Second off, as you have known, I don't take notes. I don't usually try to take these things seriously. I usually just try to have a good time. I needed to take notes to engage myself with this movie, because if I didn't, I probably would just walk away and not look back. So I needed a reason to take notes. No, I needed a reason to watch this movie, and that was to take notes. And these are the notes I've taken throughout the hour and 20 minutes I sat through this thing. I just wrote orange and teal. Another note that just says leather. Another one that just says punk rock, hip hop, and R&B. Other ones are actual notes like action scenes have a cut every second, very rubbery CGI, and then just some statements like Catwoman is somebody's fetish movie, which it definitely is. And a last note in which, okay, we got to the end of the movie, right? In the end of the movie, she kills the villain, and then she says, and I quote, "I ain't a hero," or she says, "I'm no hero, but I ain't a killer," after she's killed the main villain. So, these are the notes taken by someone watching a movie that's 120 minutes long. And yet, all of these notes makes it seem like I watched a short film that's 15 minutes long. If I were forced to write a college thesis on Catwoman, I would fail because I can't make enough filler to make this even 2 pages.
I mean, we're as of recording time, and this is going to be shorter in listening time because there's going to be, some pauses or whatever, or moments and ums edited out. But we're at 50 minutes. We try to keep these things at least to like round up to an hour 55 minutes, and I'm like really pushing off this last paragraph because, like you said, we're trying to fill time because there's just nothing here. There's nothing here. So before I kind of wrap up the paragraph and we got to bottom out and talk about the basketball scene we've been alluding to, because during the courtship between Detective Tom Lone and Patience Phillips, they go onto a basketball court surrounded by children and have a very, I know it was supposed to be sexual pickup game one-on-one where they like grind against each other, and also I think they dribble about twice. This movie is so bad that while watching it, I forget why I love film, why I love comic books, and why I love superheroes. And this scene made me forget why I love basketball. A great sport. And it is like, if you've listened to the Daredevil episode, and if you recall, we went on for a long time about the weird like parkour playground scene with the teeter-totter and the kids. That shit is like goddamn Rosebud compared to the basketball scene. It is, in my mind,
fucking Citizen Kane. It is Citizen Kane.
In my mind, the basketball scene in Catwoman is, I think it's the worst thing I've ever seen. It is the worst scene I have ever seen. The amount of money that was put into this movie to look this poorly. Nobody who worked on this scene had any concept of what basketball is. I think they were seeing the ball in the hoop for the first time. And it is so atrociously, I don't want to say choreographed, because there's really no choreography. They just kind of rub up against each other, and then there's a CGI Halle Berry in another awful 2000s outfit flying through the air, dunking the points, and then it's like also edited so poorly and choppy that you can't really make out what's happening. And again, it's also similar to the playground scene. It's really weird to me that there's this like attempt at a charged scene with all this tension, and they're like surrounded by screaming children. But yeah, we can't go any further without at least acknowledging fully that whole moment.
I can't imagine how bored the children were on set during that scene. They have to sit there and act like they're cheering, and nothing's happening. They just sit there and they cheer, and the only thing that's going on is they have the camera zoom in on Halle Berry's ass, and it's
it's horrendous. It's just embarrassing. You know what I mean? Like, it's embarrassing on all fronts. It's embarrassing that this film was written. It's embarrassing that it was filmed, that it was released. I'm embarrassed for Halle Berry that she was in it. Like, everything about this movie just screams embarrassing.
She should be ashamed that she was in this movie, and
That's
she
what
is.
I'm saying.
She probably is.
Yeah,
and she has every right to be, and she should be ashamed because her involvement. I don't know. I don't even know. Like, everyone's involvement. I just hate you. If you were involved with this movie, I hate you.
I
fucking hate
that's
all.
completely fair. That's valid.
Yeah, it is an actual detriment to human society. It's just, that's how awful it is. And this movie is so bad that, okay, the aforementioned basketball scene. I tried to watch it, and every time I will go like a minute in, my brain will tune out. Actually,
self-preservation.
I may have achieved enlightenment, because before I knew it, I snapped back to reality. I'm like, oh my god, what just happened? And I'm in a different scene. I had no idea time had just passed. Like, I was in such a zen. Like, Catwoman just put me through such immense emotional pain that I just went into my mind and just thought about nothing. Absolutely nothing for like 5 minutes.
Nothing could have...
And before I knew it, that scene was over. And I thanked any god out there that I tuned it out. I did not rewind. I refused to rewind. I was not going to put myself through it. Because if a scene put me through that to the point where my body physically rejected it, I'm not going to watch it.
There's nothing that could have prepared me for how bad this movie was.
All right, well, let me go through this last little paragraph, and then we could bitch a little bit more, as if we've ever made anything in our lives, and then wrap up. So, Patience slips out of her cell and confronts Laurel in her office, rescuing Tom, who had come to question Laurel after second thoughts about Patience, who he now realizes is Catwoman. He has second thoughts about her guilt in the process, and reveals that Laurel is the one responsible for her death. Laurel reveals the product's side effects. Discontinuing its use makes the skin disintegrate, while continuing its use makes the skin as hard as marble, so she gets marble skin from a face cream is her superpower. During the fight, she scratches Laurel's face several times, causing Laurel to fall out of a window, grabbing onto a pipe. Laurel sees her face in the window's reflection and horrified by her skin's rapid disintegration, which she just put cream on. Don't know how that happened. As a result of the scratches and her own use of Boline over the years, which she's been using it for years, but also it's a brand new product, she fails to grab hold of Patience's outstretched arm and falls to her death. So, there was several points throughout this movie that I really contemplated pausing it and switching to Batman Returns to get a palate cleanser. One of them, to name a few, one was the basketball scene. One was a scene in a nightclub where Catwoman walks up to the bartender and she doesn't... Here's the thing, we said she just drinks cream. There's more to it than that. She has, like, the fucking gall to ask for a White Russian, hold the vodka, hold the Kahlua, which, if you don't know, only leaves cream. And the bartender, completely unfazed by this woman in a leather cat BDSM outfit seemingly covered in oil, asking for a cup of cream, just gives it to her, of which case she then chugs it and, like, licks her upper lip. Again, poorly made fetish film. I almost turned it off. And the last of which is during the final fight, when Catwoman is knocked into the glass window and is barely holding on, and Laurel says it's game over, to which she replies, guess what, it's overtime, and pushes herself back up. And I could have puked. I really could have. But yeah, I don't know, there's a lot we haven't really talked about yet. You guys want to talk about the villain or the finale at all? Or any of the supporting cast? They all suck.
I mean, I don't really want to talk about any of this, but I guess we're here, so... It was bad. It was really bad. The fight scene was bad, and the dialogue, the whole movie was bad. And it was really bad during the fight scene, too. And, and like Jake mentioned, she says if you don't use the cream, your skin disintegrates, but then she had just used the cream and her skin was disintegrating, so that doesn't make... And, like, I'm okay with movies not having a lot of, like, reasonable real-world logic, but at least stick to your own logic that you set in the movie. And they didn't do that. It's just...
Wait, what logic did they set in the movie? I'm genuinely confused.
She says that... If you don't, she says if you don't use the cream, that your skin will disintegrate. But then her skin disintegrates even though she uses the cream.
Yeah, I'm okay with something like that if it's for the best dramatically and thematically, but it provides nothing. Yeah, but it's just stupid.
And you know what? Yeah. It provides nothing, and even if it did, it would be adding on to nothing.
Also, like, if you're able to make a cream that makes your skin hard as marble, or, like, can disintegrate faces, aren't there just better uses for that than making it, selling it as makeup? I feel like that's something, like, the military would want. There's so many ways that logically that would make more sense to get money out of.
It was basically like a big pharma kind of plot. Ooh. Like they just were sending out shit that they knew people would then become reliant on.
Well, and this is where it doesn't make a lot of sense, because the movie wants, again, like, it sort of, I guess, wants to be a commentary on misogyny in the makeup in the beauty industry, and the fact that men control this thing, like, that has all this control over women through social norms, but the villain ends up being the woman. Like the husband, whatever his name is a complete dick, don't get me wrong, but Laurel's the ultimate bad guy. And so then it's again, on top of this, movie's just very hypocritical about itself, because it's also just an excuse to put Halle Berry in skimpy outfits. But I don't know, my brain's gonna hurt if I think about what they're trying to do too much, because I don't think they were trying is the biggest issue.
It's just there's nothing. There's nothing
bad.
good.
Yeah,
it's like most things that are bad. Like, I can at least like appreciate something about them, pull some kind of entertainment. There's just nothing good about it. Like, I can't say a good thing about this movie.
Oh, we've also talked a lot about the bad effects already, but did anyone else notice that, like, when Laurel dies, and I also, side note, had to look up Laurel's name like multiple times while making the outline for this and taking my notes, because I just could not remember. Patience Phillips was the only name I like actually stuck with me, strangely enough. Probably just because it's alliteration, but which is a comic book classic in fairness. Laurel's death looks like a faceless naked mannequin falling in like slow motion, and it looks like it's like the same cycle being repeated in front of a scrolled through background. Like you had like just like a 2D background that you were scrolling while somebody dropped the mannequin that was like faceless and naked. It looks so bad, I almost couldn't believe it. I actually did rewind because I was like, honestly, even for this, that seems unacceptably bad. I probably just wasn't really looking. So I rewound like 5 seconds and was like, oh no, it's actually that atrocious.
Yeah, no, I was like, I was so devastated by that. Like, it was disrespectfully bad. There's no excuse for it.
This is such a great movie, guys. I love it so much. It's my new favorite movie.
There's no reason a movie like this should exist.
Honestly, do you guys want to like get to final thoughts? Because I really don't know how much more we can say.
Do we even need to do the final thoughts? Because I think it's pretty obvious of what we think.
Okay, well, just to summarize for myself, this movie's bad. There's pretty much not really anything to like about it, in my opinion. The visual effects are awful. Catwoman looks like shiny rubber the whole time, and I'm also not sure why they are always like CGIing, using a CGI model for Catwoman, and not just during action sequences, but there's scenes where she's just straight up walking on a roof and it's very clearly not a real body. It's baffling. The costume is the worst costume we've seen yet. I think it's worse than Bullseye and Steel and Nuclear Man and anything else. Laurel Hader, I think, is the worst villain in any of these movies so far. It's an embarrassing movie. It really is. There's a straight up awful finale to an awful movie with an awful story, plot, characters, romance, everything. The supporting cast is virtually non-existent. It's bad. I don't recommend it. My least favorite thing is that basketball scene, because it hurts my brain to think about how that got filmed, how that passed go, how it got included in a movie and off the storyboards. And my favorite thing is, I guess the movie's, not terribly long or overly complicated, which I think the only way you could make it worse was if this movie was looking to be smart or complex, and it seems to not want to be that, so I appreciate that. And no, I do not recommend it.
I think that the worst thing is that there's nothing. It's not the type of bad movie that I can even laugh at or be entertained by in any way, and that's just there's just nothing there. And the best part is that I will never have to watch it again now, because we're done this particular podcast that is about this film, and I will never have to watch it again, and I never will. And neither should you. So that's my final thought. You should not watch it. I do not recommend it. Never, ever watch it.
If you have any semblance of self-respect left, you shouldn't watch this. Don't even entertain the thought of watching this. If you want to be more culturally in tune than a guy on a podcast called Culturally Fucking Illiterate, don't watch this movie. Don't. Just don't.
I'll take that as Matt's whole thing. Oh God, my My least favorite thing about this movie is that it exists. My favorite thing about this movie is that it's over and I'll never watch it again. Do I recommend it? No, and I never will. And if I were in a room and I had a gun to my head, I would never recommend this movie. Please, dear God, no.
All right. So thank you to ALO VFX for our artwork. You want better art than this? Check out ALO VFX. It's on Twitter. More better art than this, Jason.
I made the intro outro music. I make music. I'm working on some stuff. It'll be out when it's out. The Upsides on SoundCloud, _UpsidesPA on Twitter, and the UpsidesPA on Instagram.
Please follow Culture Illiterate on Spotify and Apple Podcasts, and subscribe to Culture Illiterate Podcast on YouTube. You can follow us at illiterate_pod for both Twitter and Instagram for more of us, and you can reach us at cultureilliteratepod@gmail.com for questions and comments. Next episode, we're going to cap what has so far been a great trilogy with Blade Trinity. Catch you then.